Welcome. You've come to the right place if you're looking to unwind, to quiet your mind, and to gently fall asleep while learning something from the distant past. Tonight, we drift slowly into the heart of the Roman Empire, not through its great battles or its legendary conquests, but through the quieter corners of its streets, its homes, and its forgotten lives. We'll wander first through the cramped alleyways of the Eternal City, where merchants rise before dawn and the scent of oil, bread, and smoke fills the morning air. We'll then follow the life of an emperor, not in triumph, but in his quiet unraveling. Later, we'll step softly into the mysterious world of Roman household magic and forgotten gods. And finally, we'll take our place on silk cushions in a patrician villa, where luxury whispers through candlelight and soft music. As always, this journey will be gentle. You don't need to remember every name or place. Simply relax and allow the rhythms of the past to lull you, slowly, to sleep. Now, let us begin with a morning, not yours, but one that might have belonged to someone not unlike you, long ago, in a city of marble and dust. Imagine yourself lying on a narrow wooden plank. It serves as your bed, though it might be more accurate to call it a shelf, tucked just above the shop you rent on a crowded street near the Forum. It's still dark out. The only light comes from the flicker of a single oil lamp hanging on a nail in the wall. You can hear the slow drip of last night's rain outside, falling from cracked clay tiles onto stone. Below your room, if it can be called that, the floor creaks where mice scurry, and in the distance, a cartwheel screeches against the uneven cobbles. You wake not by choice, but from the dull ache in your back, a familiar reminder that this plank is not forgiving. There's a faint smell of vinegar, stale bread, and old cloth. Your hands, even in sleep, have remained curled, as if still holding coins or scales or string. And as your eyes adjust, you hear the muffled voice of another merchant stirring nearby, clearing his throat. Your shop is no more than a shallow stall, open to the street during the day, shuttered by heavy wooden boards at night. You sell cloth, mostly dyed linens, rough wool, and cheap tunics in common sizes. Some days you sell quickly. Others you sit and wait for hours, swatting away flies and adjusting your display in the breeze. You tie on your worn sandals and climb down a crooked wooden ladder. Your stall creaks open, and as you lift the shutter, a gust of early morning air greets you. It carries with it the mingled smells of baked bread, fish, whetstone, and human sweat. A dog trots past, dragging a loose rope. A boy runs behind him, barefoot and laughing. You nod to a baker as assistant across the way. He has already fanning the flames of a brick oven. You light a fresh lamp with a taper, pin your coins into your belt, and begin another day. There are pickpockets to watch for. There are guards who expect small bribes to look the other way. There are wealthy patrons who haggle for sport and often walk away without paying. At midday, the sun presses hard against the paving stones. You roll up your sleeves and sit on a stool behind your stall, watching the slow procession of life pass by. You see a water carrier with clay jugs balanced on his shoulders. You see a foreign merchant with spices wrapped in cloth. You see a wealthy woman pause to speak to a slave, her hair carefully arranged, her sandals spotless. Your own tunic is faded and smells faintly of smoke and dye. There's dust under your fingernails. You've eaten only half a loaf of bread since morning, but you don't mind. There is always tomorrow, and always the same rhythm. As the sun lowers and the Forum begins to quiet, you take down your awning and close your stall. The boards creak. The last light fades. You sit with a few others by a small brazier. Someone offers you wine, watered down and sour. You talk little. You listen more. You climb back up to your shelf, lay down your limbs like tools set aside for the night, and rest your eyes. Tomorrow, you'll rise again before the birds. And once again, the rhythm of your days will begin. It is quiet in the palace tonight. Beyond the tall marble columns and gold-gilded statues, beyond the perfumed gardens and bronze doors that never quite close all the way, a man sits in silence. His name is Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, though he often insists he is an artist first and emperor second. He wears a robe dyed deep purple, the rarest and most expensive color in the Roman world. But there are sweat marks along the collar, and he no longer walks with the same proud stride he once did. Tonight, he listens to nothing in particular. Only the creak of sandals outside his chamber, and the whisper of wind threading its way through the fig trees in the garden. Nero was once adored. He became emperor at just 17, guided by his sharp, ambitious mother, Agrippina the Younger. For a time, the Roman people called him generous, even golden. He lowered taxes, banned secret trials, and sponsored lavish games. But the years wore on, and something inside him, perhaps fear or pride or a desperate hunger for love, began to twist. He wanted to be more than a ruler. He fancied himself a poet, a charioteer, an actor. He would take the stage in grand amphitheaters, performing tragedies of his own making. The senators watched, applauding politely, terrified to do otherwise. Some laughed quietly behind closed doors. Others began to whisper. Whispers became rumors, and rumors eventually became plots. Nero heard of one, then another, then another. He grew more paranoid. He accused, imprisoned, exiled, and executed. No one, not even family, was safe. His mother. She had guided his rise, arranged his marriage, cleared his path. But eventually, he saw her as a threat. He had her killed, though even that took more than one attempt. The people began to turn. They suffered. Famine came. Then fire, the great fire of Rome. It burned for days, consuming neighborhoods and temples, markets and homes. Some said Nero watched from a rooftop, singing of Troy while the flames rose. Others said he ordered it himself to clear space for a new palace. No one knows for certain. But when the smoke cleared, his reputation was ash. To shift the blame, he found a new scapegoat, a strange, quiet sect called the Christians. He punished them cruelly, publicly, grotesquely. And still, the people did not return to him. By the time rebellion broke out in the provinces, Nero had lost the army, the Senate, and even his own household. He tried to flee. He begged a loyal freedman to help him escape, but the empire was no longer his. In a villa outside the city, with his enemies approaching, Nero ordered his own death. But he hesitated. The man who had orchestrated deaths without blinking now trembled. He asked someone else to do it for him. In the end, it was his own hand, guided by another, that ended his life. His last words, whispered like a child who lost his play, were said to be, "Qualis artifex perio." What an artist dies in me. And just like that, the curtain fell. Take a deep breath here. Let your body settle as the echoes of Nero's world fade into soft silence. In our next scene, we won't follow a person, but a mystery. It's late evening in the city. The streets are dim now, lit only by oil lamps swaying in the warm breeze. Shadows stretch along the paving stones. The market stalls are closed. But in one small home, a woman kneels beside a low shrine built into the corner of her kitchen. She's not praying to Jupiter, or Mars, or even Venus. Instead, she whispers to the Lares, the guardian spirits of the household. She lights a pinch of incense, pours a drop of wine into a tiny bowl, and sets a piece of bread beside a small carved figurine. To an outsider, it might seem like superstition. But to her, and to most Romans, this is simply how one lives. Because to be Roman was not just to worship the mighty gods in marble temples. It was to walk through a world filled with invisible forces, seen only in flickers, heard only in dreams. Let's start beneath the feet. Roman cities were layered, quite literally, with hidden objects. Coins buried under thresholds. Iron nails driven into doorframes. Small bones wrapped in linen and tucked inside walls. These weren't forgotten things. They were deliberate protections, small charms meant to keep evil away. In some homes, tiny terracotta figurines stood watch in dark corners. Soldiers, animals, or winged spirits with wide eyes and open mouths. In others, scratched into the plaster of walls, you'd find faint inscriptions written backwards, in Latin or Greek, calling upon gods or spirits to bind, confuse, or weaken a neighbor, a rival, a thief, or a lover. These were curse tablets, known as defixions. They were often written on thin sheets of lead, rolled tightly, pierced with a nail, and buried in graves, wells, or temples. A typical curse might read, "May he lose his strength, his sleep, his speech. May he wander in confusion until he returns what is mine." It wasn't always cruel. Sometimes these tablets were born of heartbreak, pleas for love to be returned or jealousy to be soothed. Even public places held strange secrets. In Pompeii, a bakery's wall bears graffiti shaped like a fish, a symbol said to protect against the evil eye. Across the empire, people wore charms shaped like tiny fists, open hands, or phalluses, believed to ward off misfortune and envy. Yes, even something as crude as a carved wooden phallus, hanging from a necklace or chime, was considered a tool of protection. Romans believed in fascinum, a magical force that could repel harm, especially from looks filled with envy or resentment. It's why infants were given little protective charms, why soldiers carried amulets into battle, why even emperors sometimes wore talismans sewn into their garments. And then there were the household gods, Lares and Penates, spirits of the home, the pantry, the hearth. They didn't demand temples, just attention, a bit of oil, a crumb of cake, a whispered word at dawn. Every day, the paterfamilias, the head of the household, might offer a small token before starting the day. And when a family moved to a new home, the spirits moved with them, carried in small statues or offerings. Birth, marriage, illness, travel, all were guided by quiet rituals, charms, and gestures subtle to notice unless you knew what to look for. To us, these practices may seem strange, forgotten relics of a superstitious past. But to the Romans, they were the glue that held life together, silent, watchful, and ever-present. So as you lay quietly now, think of that small shrine in the corner of the kitchen, the flicker of firelight on painted clay, the scent of warm wax, rosemary, and olive oil rising in the air. In a world so grand and noisy on the outside, the Romans still believed that the most powerful magic lived not in temples, but in the quiet corners of their homes. It's twilight in the countryside beyond Rome. The sky glows with the last warmth of the day, and a soft wind stirs the tall cypress trees that line the villa's marble driveway. Torches flicker along the colonnade. A fountain burbles gently in the garden court, where carved statues of gods and nymphs lean toward one another in frozen conversation. Inside the villa, all is prepared. Silk cushions are arranged in a semicircle around low tables of polished wood. Musicians tune their lyres in the corner. Slaves move soundlessly, placing silver platters beneath linen cloths and adjusting the scented oil lamps one by one. You arrive just as the feast begins. You are a guest tonight, one of many invited by a powerful senator whose name carries weight in the forum and fear in quieter corners. You remove your sandals, wash your hands in rose-scented water, and recline gently on your assigned couch. The cushions are soft. The room is warm. The scent of roasted honey-glazed meats fills the air. The meal begins with gustaccio, appetizers. Boiled eggs drizzled with garum, olives from Hispania, soft cheese wrapped in fig leaves. Each dish is explained by a steward as if it were a story, where the ingredients came from, how they were prepared, what they symbolize. The conversation flows easily at first. Gossip about provincial governors, debates over poetry, a few jokes told at the expense of some distant cousin. Then the host enters. He wears a deep crimson toga, and a ring so large clinks against his wine cup. He smiles as he speaks, but his eyes scan the room like a tactician, measuring every guest's posture, every reply, every silence. The main courses arrive: stuffed dormice with pine nuts, crane eggs and saffron, flamingo tongue, a rare delicacy reserved for only the most elite. You taste only a little. The food is exotic, but your appetite fades under the weight of the performance, because this isn't just dinner. It's politics. The man across from you pretends to laugh at a passing joke, but his eyes don't smile. The woman beside you, draped in pearls, her hair in an elaborate coil, speaks little, but listens to everything, even here where nothing is needed. Everything is at stake. Between courses, poets recite verses by candlelight. A slave boy dances, his anklets chiming softly. Another pours wine into your cup, careful never to spill a drop. You sip slowly. The wine is dark, spiced, strong. It settles you and slows you. Outside, the crickets sing. Inside, a slow harp melody hums under the chatter. The walls are painted with scenes from myth: Achilles dragging Hector, Diana hunting the stag, Venus rising from the sea. But the faces look familiar, because the artist modeled them after the family who owns this villa. Here, even art is self-portrait. Dessert arrives as a surprise. Dates stuffed with nuts, honeyed pastries, and fruit from Africa chilled in mountain snow. A marvel in the heat of summer. But even this sweetness feels distant, because here, in this quiet temple of luxury, you sense something deeper: loneliness, pressure, performance. This is not a world of ease, but of calculation. Every robe, every word, every gesture must be perfect. One mistake, one whisper of scandal, and everything could vanish. You glance around the room. Everyone is smiling, but no one is resting. And as the candles burn low, the music fades, and guests begin to leave, you recline once more. Not in wealth, not in fear, but in thought. The villa will go quiet soon. The torches will burn out. And behind its marble walls tomorrow, it all begins again. Closing words, and now, our journey through ancient Rome comes to a close. You've walked the streets as a merchant, felt the weight of a ruler's fall, listened to the whispers of old household gods, and dined with those who had everything, and yet perhaps nothing at all. Let your breath slow, let your mind drift, and know that the past, though distant, still hums softly in the quiet of the night. Good night.